Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. This time it is uncommon base building, double inferno compartment base. The video will be divided into two parts. The first one will be the backstory behind this base, as well as the thought process, so the wall layout, the defenses, the traps, and the clan castle choice. In the second half of the video I will show the base in action in the war that was used in. As for the backstory, in YOLO mode we are doing CWL Premier, Spring Madness Tourney, and we are in the semifinals against Legion of Noobs. If both clans perfect, we will go to a tiebreaker, which has a breakdown of 2 Town Hall 13, 2 Town Hall 12, and 1 Town Hall 11, and it is also one hit, which means that if you can bait some hits, or if you can use a strange base, you have higher chances on defending, and consequently winning the war. So in this case I wanted to use a compartment which isn't really used in the competitive war scene, which is the double inferno compartment. And that's because if I do a queen charge into the core and then lalo the rest, the queen charge can basically get possibly the town hall and 2 infernos, and pathing throughout the whole base will be easy because I only have hard pathing around the double infernos. And in terms of witches, super witches, if they get into the core they can basically reach half of the base and probably triple the base. So I chose to use this compartment because it isn't really used a lot and because there are some predictable hits that I will face, and I had some tricks to try to defend what I just mentioned. So now for the base, I won't show the traps until I talk about them, so try to guess where I have my traps based on what I say during the thought process. I started with the double inferno compartment setup in the core, and as you can see I have a very basic 5x5 here due to zap and freeze purposes, and I also have a lot of wall pieces in the core because I may or may not have a Tesla farm. If I had a Tesla farm in the core, it would be really hard to zap lalo this base, because if I were to, let's say, zap both infernos, I would still have my Tesla farm in the core and possibly a lot of traps. But if you were to queen charge or jump into the core, then Teslas wouldn't be ideal because they would basically be a free gift. Also, it's worth noting that in the regular war, Legion of Noobs didn't really use Skelly to trigger Tesla farm and then zapping infernos, so I can have my Tesla farm wherever I want in this base. So I started with this compartment, as I said, and then I added some dead zones, especially here in the bottom and not a lot in the top. And that's because if I use a lot of walls as well as my infernos in the core, it means that my town hall wouldn't really be protected enough to discourage a queen charge. So basically my town hall has to be outside because I have no space inside and no walls to cover it. And if I have an outside town hall, I could face a queen charge going into the town hall. And if they do that queen charge, I don't want to give easy access for wall breakers going from the town hall into the core. So basically I wanted to force a jump onto these dead zones. This is the only spot where they may wall break, so if I were to fix this base, I would definitely fix this setup and basically do a dead zones that goes from here to here, so that they can't really wall break. So now I did my core, I did my town hall compartment, and then I did this inferno compartment. The inferno compartment is really standard. If you saw my videos you probably remember and saw a lot of these compartments. I have my inferno, I have a 5x5 on the top, on the bottom, a wall and a wall piece to prevent a queen charge or the king going inside. In this case you can also see that I have a sweeper near the inferno, which isn't really ideal because they may want to zap this inferno, but you have to consider that if they zap this Inferno and then try to Lalo, for example, I still have really hard pathing going around the core. Maybe they can try to zap and do Super Witches, but I also have a lot of space here, so I may or may not have a Tesla farm in this setup. So now, after I did the core, the Town Hall and the Inferno, I went on with the Eagle. As you can see, the Eagle compartment isn't really anything new. So I have a 5x5 on the bottom and on the top, and then the Eagle in between, so that the Eagle isn't walkable from the 5x5. Again, if you watch my channel, you should know what I am talking about. If not, I recommend checking my previous videos. I also have this mode so that it is a little bit harder to go into the Eagle using a wall break, because yes, maybe the wall break will go in, but the heroes may go outside and basically go here. Now, I also chose to have this setup with walls. Honestly, I am not really sure if it works, if I am doing it right, because it is really close to the outside. But I still wanted to do it because it may discourage the attacker from entering into the Eagle. Then here I also have my usual hall and wall piece behind, for the same reason that I talked about before. Here I have a strange setup with walls, and honestly I could very well move the wizard tower one tile left and close this gap, but I wanted to leave it this way because maybe the attacker will think that I have something fishy going on and won't really try to hit the base from here. And then I basically finished the base, so I did this queen setup with expos covering her, and then I also had my king and my warden in this setup. Originally the king was in this zone, but I noticed that it could reach outside, so maybe if they were to, let's say, drop a giant here for switches, the king would aggro here and would basically be outside of the expos covering range. So I did this setup so that the king basically would target troops from into the wizard tower, because as you can see, if you drop troops here, they will be outside its range, and then they will be inside its range near the wizard tower. I could have had my queen near basically the Eagle or the Town Hall or some Infernos, but I wanted to spread my key values, so that if you were to do, let's say, a queen charge or a Sui or a blizzard, you wouldn't really get a lot of value. So now, after I did the wall skeleton and I placed my expos, I started placing my key defenses, which are of course the wizard towers and their defenses, as well as later on the sweepers and the clan castle. As for their defenses, I saw few queen charge Lalos, not a lot, but there was still the possibility that they may queen charge Lalo. So I had air defenses on one half of the base, especially near the Town Hall, as well as the Eagle, so that I could have my queen and Infernos and Splash away from their defenses. So now, if you basically do a line going through the middle, so let's say doing this way, you can see that all my air defenses are on one side of the base. But also you need to consider possible dragon hits. So if a Sui can get 2 air defenses, it isn't really ideal. So for example, I couldn't really have maybe, let's say, this air defense here, because then maybe a Sui right here could get 2 air defenses. Yes, I could bait a Sui, but honestly Zap Dragons was used, but was used less than Witches and Super Witches. I just wanted to make Zap Dragons look hard, so that I could use my Sams against healers in Super Witches. So this was the reasoning behind their defenses: spread out air defenses to avoid a possible Sui getting 2 air defenses, as well as having air defenses in a sort of, what I say, C shape in half of the base, so that 𝚘𝚘 would be really hard. As for wizard towers, you want to place them away from air defenses, but also close to other splash, such as Infernos, and also so that you can't really directly target them with loons in case of 𝚘𝚘. So as you can see, I have two wizard towers here, and they are really close to the outside, but they are outside of the air defenses range. So basically, if you drop Hound from the tank the wizard tower for a bit, but then the wizard tower will target loons. Also, you can try to maybe use an ice golem right here to tank for the wizard tower and then use Dragbat. But I also have this wizard tower covering the eagle, so you would need to freeze this wizard tower, and I also have this inferno and this inferno covering this wizard tower. So even if they didn't use bats a lot, I still have coverage against that. I have one wizard tower here because I couldn't really find a better spot for it. And then I have this wizard tower here, which is also near Infernos, which is a pain for 𝚘𝚘, and this wizard tower here. And I already talked about how this wizard tower was here against 𝚘𝚘, but then I switched because I thought that 𝚘𝚘𝚛𝚎 was more likely than 𝚘𝚘. So now that we placed the wizard towers as well as air defenses and expos, I wanted to place my sweepers and the clan castle. So usually I have one sweeper covering the town hall or an area close to the town hall, and the other one covering some infernos or the eagle. So in this setup I didn't really have a lot of space, so I just wanted to have this sweeper right here. I could maybe have the sweeper like here, but honestly I thought that I was already well covered against 𝚘𝚘, so I just wanted to maybe push healers back from here and possibly be a pain. And also the other one is against, is covering the eagle against maybe Blizzard or maybe some other sort of 𝚘𝚘. As you can see here, I have all my expos in this area, so I think that they won't really queen charge the eagle, in which case they may try to 𝚘𝚘 the eagle. So basically a sweeper here will be, as I have two air defenses, two wizard towers, the sweeper, the geared archer tower, as well as the expos. The clan castle is also in this area because it is really close to my DPS, so basically if you try to do an entry from here into the clan castle into the DPS, it will be a pain. And also it didn't really make sense to have the clan castle near the town hall when you could basically lure the clan castle and kill it under no DPS, because I don't have DPS near the town hall. I have spread defenses but not a lot of DPS. So this was the reasoning. And also it didn't make sense to have like a sweeper covering the core, because you can't access the core if you don't go through something else. So the eagle was the best spot in my opinion. I also wanted to have a geared archer tower in this spot because I thought that it may be a pain. And after the geared archer tower I want to talk about my bomb towers. So basically the geared archery tower as well as the bomb tower have the same purpose against zap witches. They need to be on the flanks to try to kill witches, but also they don't need to be too inside, because if they are too inside then the main attack can get them, and also if they are too outside a simple loon trade may get them. So I wanted to have them on the flanks. And basically I tested two zap witches hits. One was from here with a wall wrecker going into the town hall, because in tiebreaker rules on town hall 12 you can only have a blimp, a wall wrecker and a stone slammer. So basically a wall wrecker going through here, but this zone had a lot of DPS, so witches couldn't really defend. So then the next best hit, which became the best hit with zap witches, was zap the core, and then use 𝚘𝚘𝚘𝚘 witches from here, and this actually tripled in testing, so I had to place my defenses and traps against it. And as you can see, I have a bomb tower and a geared archer tower on the flanks, and also I have this bomb tower which is next to a wizard tower and an inferno to basically kill whatever is left. I may swap these two, but for example, if I do swap, you can see that I don't really have a lot of air coverage here, so they may use a baby dragon. Yes, I may still have a Tesla farm here, but maybe I don't have it. So basically, I just want to make sure that whatever the it is, it looks like I am covered, because for example, if I had a bomb tower here, then a baby dragon would get too much value here, or I needed to have a Tesla farm in this setup. So basically, I didn't want them to think one situation or the other, so I just did a normal situation with the archer tower covering this area. So now for whatever is left, all I have to do is place my outside defenses and trash ring. As for the outside defenses, I have them so that pathing going into the wizard towers or their defenses is a little longer than usual. So for example, if you wanted to get into this wizard tower, you would have to go into here or into here, which is a little bit long. For this air defense, you would have to go here and then go outside, or here and then go outside. You could try to, for example, loon trade this and then send loons into here, but you'll still have the Inferno Tower as well as the Sweeper. So basically you just want to have hard pathing or long pathing going into your key defenses. As for the trash ring, I have a maybe normal trash ring, so I have storages in likely entry points or points where I want to stall troops, so like here, because I have a lot of DPS. I also have the ward near the king and the queen. I could maybe swap these two, so this could be a future idea, but Zap witches came from here, so a warden here would make sense because the king would then go into here and aggro the witches. I have a storage here because they may try to maybe do a Sui here or a Queen Wall to funnel. I also have a storage here, storages here, so that if they do a Warden Walk or something like that, it is a little bit longer than usual. And I think that this basically concludes the base. When placing the trash ring, remember to consider possible border bounces. In this case, I didn't really have a lot of border bounces, but probably I had maybe 1-2 that I didn't really see. So if possible, try to avoid that. And this basically concludes the thought process of the base regarding the part before the traps. So now we will talk about how I place traps and how I chose the right clan castle. Looking at the traps, you can see that I have a lot of springs here, here, and also here. And that's because when they used the Zap witches, they used the super giants to tank. So the two possible entries were with the super giants right here or super giants right here. And then after I kill super giants, I will try to kill witches. So I have a double giant bomb here, and it is a double giant bomb because I couldn't really find a better spot for this giant bomb. So I just wanted to make sure to kill witches in this setup. And here you can see that I have a anti-witches standard setup, which is a giant bomb and 2 small bombs. I also have this giant bomb here because I have splash covering it. And then I have here another giant bomb and an anti-witches setup here. And this basically defends super giants and war wrecker with the Zap witches from this zone or this zone as we tested. Now for the air traps, as you can see, I have one Tesla in the core with a tornado and 2 red air bombs. And as I said, I wasn't really worried about a possible Skelly to trigger Teslas in the core and then zap. But I still wanted to have one Tesla in case they were going to, let's say, zap one Inferno or both Infernos and then Lalo. And also I have a tornado and 2 air bombs, as well as the 2 Infernos, so that basically the core is a kill zone if they were going to queen charge Lalo and not queen charge into the core. I also have 2 air bombs into here. They are outside of the air defense range, which means that lava poops won't trigger them. And also, basically Loons will go from the Inferno to the Sweeper to the core. So if you are doing a Lalo and you see 2 air bombs into here and then 2 Infernos nearby, you may want to use the Warden right here, but then it means that you will face the Tornado and 2 red air bombs in the core, which isn't really ideal. As for the SAMs, I have SAMs here and also here, and one of the hits that we tested was Zap Dragons. The Sui was right here, getting this air defense, and then Dragons into the Town Hall, with usually a Stone Slammer right here on this air defense. So basically, if you are using Dragons into the Town Hall, you will Tome into the Town Hall, which means that if I were to have, let's say, a Sam right here, basically the Sam would hit Dragons under the Tome, so I needed to have Sams a little bit away. And then I also have these air skellies which are covering the queen, so basically if you are doing Dragons into the core, you will then face the Sams and the skeleton traps while the queen is shooting at your Dragons. I also have Sams here for the same reasoning, because there were a couple of variation of Dragons, and also since I have storages here, you can't really zap storages, or the Stone Slammer can't really get storages, so Dragons would go into the core or into here and then get the Sams. Here I have a Tesla farm, which was meant against Warden Walk, because usually when they do a Warden Walk, when they do zap Super Witches, they zap 1 Infernos and then do a Warden Walk right next to the Inferno. So I had a Tesla farm here, because I noticed that doing a Warden Walk right here wouldn't be ideal, because I had a lot of DPS already. So they usually did a Warden Walk right here in testing, and that's why I have a Tesla farm in this spot. And I think that this is all regarding the traps. It was also good against basically a queen charge, this setup I mean, because a queen charge would go into the Town Hall and then into here, and also if the queen charge went a bit further, it would get the Sams and their Skellies on the healers, which wasn't ideal. So now I think that we should consider the possible clan castle, because I talked about traps already. And the possible hits that I was going to face were Zap Witches and Super Witches. Also, possibly, but a little bit less, Queen Charge Lalo, Zap Sui Lalo, and Zap Dragons. In terms of Zap Witches, it was basically Zap Witches into here or into here. So, a Nound Clan Castle would stall the Witches. Super Witches would go into the Town Hall and then join me to the core. So again, a Nound Clan Castle would stall the Super Witches, also considering that I have a lot of DPS in the core. So maybe if I had a Nound Clan Castle into the core, I could stall the Super Witches when they were under DPS and could kill something. As for Queen Charge Lalo, same reasoning in the core, a Clan Castle to stall and heavy DPS. As for Zap Dragons, as I said, the Sui was around here. So basically a Sui would lure the Clan Castle when the Queen would try to get this geared Archer Tower. So again, maybe a Clan Castle would cause a time fail. I will also talk about the 𝚘𝚘𝚛𝚎 when I show the live it, so don't worry if you don't remember the 𝚘𝚘𝚛𝚎 later on. One thing that I want to is that I don't really have a setup which is really good against 𝚋𝚛𝚛𝚎. So for example, let's say that I had a setup like this with all my traps in one point of the base. This would kill the loons, and maybe it would be in a spot where they wouldn't really expect this setup, so they would waste the warden and then have to face my triple inferno. So maybe I could have this setup, let's say here or here or here. But when I show the base to my YOLO mod hitters, they couldn't really find an easy queen charge plan, and actually they said a lot of different plans. So I didn't want to commit all my traps against one hit, which had let's say maybe 1 in 8 chances of being executed. So yeah, this was the reasoning, and I chose to have spread out traps because spread out traps may trigger when they do a hit. Let's say that maybe I have spread out red air bombs, maybe I have 4 out of 6 that trigger if they are spread out, whereas if I had a setup like this, it could maybe shut down one complete attack, but also a queen charge could go into here and then get everything. So I was a bit unsure about a possible queen charge Lalo and decided to just play it safe, because I thought that the main attack that I was going to face were Zap Witches and Super Witches. This is the tiebreaker war that we just had against Legion of Noobs. I will leave the link in the description if you want to watch the stream again. This was CWL Premier Spring Madness semi-finals. Both clans perfected in the regular war, so we had to do a tiebreaker, and as you can see we won by perfecting again. Before I show date on my base, I want to thank everyone at YOLO Mod for hyping things up and for helping planning. I want to thank the attacking team because they did a flawless job perfecting. As for the base building team, this base was made by Ghost, and although the hit time failed, it wasn't really a hit that we planned for, as it was not baited. So I think that defending a hit that we had no traps against is really good work by him. This was made by Smith, but it was a different attack from what we had in the regular war against us. So honestly, in this case we didn't really expect it, and the base had really no chance of defending because we didn't test it. This is an old base of mine, and I won't really show it in this video because it's nothing really special or different from the other bases that I showed on my channel. The traps were tweaked by Danny, which is also the same guy that hit using this account. This is my double Inferno compartment base that I will show in the video. It was tripled last second, with a hit that we tested, but with a small variation. And again, this was made by Temper and was tripled last second, with a hit that we tested, but with a small variation. So overall, this defended, this was tripled with a hit that we didn't test, this defended, triple last second, and triple last second. So this was a really great work from us. We put in a ton of testing, and I think that the result is basically showing all the time that we put. This is the hit on my base, and as you can see, it says replay ends in 3 minutes 0 seconds, which means that basically it tripled with 0 seconds left. So although the base was tripled, I think that with some small tweaks, the base could very well defend. Now as for the hit, I will go 2 times speed. He is dropping a Cocoon in this area to basically check for potential SAMs or a Tesla farm. If you remember, I have my Tesla farm in this area, because usually when they use Super Witches, they zap this Inferno and then Warden Walk right next to the Inferno, so in this area. But in this case, he chose to switch things up, so my Tesla farm was ineffective. Maybe he did it because he feared a time fail, or maybe he thought that this area had no DPS, so it was a safe area for a Warder Walk. Now he is using the king to funnel on this side and the CoC again to check for potential SAMs. And everything is going, but as you can see the queen is going out, which means that maybe if I had like a Tesla farm here and some skellies, maybe some troops could have gone out and maybe this could have been a time fail for the attacker, but honestly I wasn't really sure how they were going to eat this base, so I didn't want to give like a free Tesla farm in this area, because yes, it is good against this strategy, but not against all the other strategies. Now he's jumping to the core and he's dealing with my 𝚘𝚘𝚛𝚎 castle. So now on this side he has some witches to basically clear this whole setup and potentially avoid a time fail, whereas in this area he's dealing with my 𝚘𝚘𝚛𝚎 castle as well as all the DPS in the core, so the X-bows, and later on the heroes, the clan castle of course, which is just here to stall troops, and then I also have some SAMs around this area. So now you may wonder why I chose an 𝚘𝚘𝚛𝚎 castle, and that's because I expected to beat with Queen Charge Lalo, Super Witches and Zap Dragons, which were the main hit in the regular war. So basically, Queen Charge Lalo, I have all my DPS in this area, so I thought that a Queen Charge would go from the Town Hall into the core, and if you Queen Charge into the core into an 𝚘𝚘𝚛𝚎 castle, all the DPS, splash and SAMs, the Queen wouldn't really survive for long, so this could have been a time fail or just a fail. As for Super Witches, same hit, same jump, and in this case it was basically a stolen CC for the same reason as the Queen Charge. In terms of Zap Witches, the main hit was going into the Eagle, into the core, and then into the Town Hall, so I thought that an 𝚘𝚘𝚛𝚎 castle could stall the troops, especially under heavy DPS fire. As for Zap Dragons, as you know, an 𝚘𝚘𝚛𝚎 castle isn't really ideal against dragons, but in this setup I tested basically a Sui going into here, getting the air defense and funneling everything into the Town Hall, and it was the most successful Sui, but as you can see, the clan castle will get lured once the queen steps into here to get these two defenses, so again an 𝚘𝚘𝚛𝚎 castle may cause some time fails. Now the attack will go on, and basically he's dealing with all the traps that I have in the core, the tornado, the SAMs, the clan castle popped, and right here you can see how the king has triggered my double giant bomb setup, and if you remember it was against the witches going this way, so I had springs right here against, and also here against super giants, and then double giant bomb against witches. In this case the king triggered my setup, so it wasn't really effective. As for the core, is now engaging my hero, so my queen, and also is under heavy DPS fire, and the warden ability popped off, so he has now no protection against all the DPS. He is also using a Stone Slammer in this area, and honestly he didn't really see my Tesla farm until he dropped the Stone Slammer, and I have basically nothing against a Stone Slammer except for DPS by the Tesla farm. So now the Stone Slammer popped. I chose to add my SAMs in the core against healers and against dragons. Maybe I could have had like one SAM into my Tesla farm, but I wasn't really sure about the hit, so I chose to add all my SAMs basically in the core. So now he's just doing cleanup. Some healers are getting triggered, some SAMs are getting triggered and targeting healers in the core, and in this area I had some red air bombs, so as you can see the loons are almost dead. Now the loons took down this archer tower, will take down this wizard tower as well as this mortar. So for a potential tweak of the base, maybe I could have had one more red air bomb in this zone to kill loons. And if you remember, it was a triple with 0 seconds left, which means that one more red air bomb in this setup could have prevented the triple. All in all, I think that this base was really good, in my opinion, because it was a concept that is really different from what you usually see. And for this reason, the attackers in YOLO mode couldn't really plan, for example, a queen charge Lalo against this base, which is also why I chose to spread my red air bombs. And I think that in one-hit format, like this tiebreaker, it is really good to have uncommon bases to basically force either a really weird queen charge, which may fail due to funnel or due to, I don't know, maybe the clan castle, maybe Sam's, or force a really easy plan, so in this case Zap Witches or Super Witches, which is normally quite easy to predict and in some cases could defend. In this case, maybe I should have considered more traps against Super Witches and less against other strategies, but I wasn't really sure how they were going to hit this base. So all in all, yes, it was a triple, but it was a small variation of what I tested, and I think that the base could defend since it was tripled last second. This is now the end of the video, so thank you for sticking with me, and if you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I will try my best to answer. See you next time.